slow combat. Everybody knows the woes of slow combat. You know, your game has been going great. You've been going through the dungeon with your comrades, and you know you trip that trap, and a wall opens, and out comes 12 orcs, and you just go, combat. All right, and the game master goes, all right, roll initiative, and everybody rolls initiative, and you know everybody, you go around and starts with one person, and each person, they ask questions to get a hold of the situation, and like, how are things placed, or let's see, or they consider the map to look and see how, people are placed and consider their options, and like, okay, I want to do this, or wait, maybe I don't want to move my guy there. Okay, but all right, I'll do this. So I move, and I attack, and I do my magic attack, and oh wait, he has some ability to dodge, so now he has to roll. And okay, well, that missed. Okay, but I have this. I'm gonna 5-step move to the side, and okay, now my turn's over. Next person. All right, they go, and we go through 1 and 2 of the same issue, and then you go around the table the same way, maybe like 4, 5, 7, the worst case I've ever heard of, 23 times, and it's just slow and plodding. Nobody's really paying attention unless it's their turn. When it comes back to them, they're like, okay, wait, where'd the guy go? All right, what happened? Okay. Well, can I do this? All right, no, okay. I guess okay, I'll do this. All right, roll. Okay. Okay. Next person. Wait, what happened? Yeah. It sucks, and it lasts forever, and everybody knows it. Even the game master knows it. Combat should not last an entire session. Combat should not last most of a session, unless we're talking like you're stuck in the middle of a battle, like between armies, and the entire session is supposed to take place in that battle. Combat is meant to be quick and impactful and fun for the players, not typically for the characters, unless they're battle drunk. But whatever. The point is, combat's supposed to be quick and impactful. It's not supposed to plod. If you can describe your combat as plodding, there's a problem. Well, the fortunate thing is there are lots of ways to speed up your combat. Things to remember are what slows down your combat are, granted, like I said before, some systems are slower, but also, there are just some ways of running initiative that actually ends up running slower. I mean, we'll touch on that a little bit later, but there are ways that you can, speed up your combat, regardless of whatever reason is actually slowing it down. The very first one is, players. For all you players out there, I'm going to stop and I'm going to speak to you now. You need to pay attention. I know if it's a slow combat, it's really hard for you to pay attention when, Steve across the table is stuttering and trying to figure out what's going on. But if you do not pay attention, when it gets back to you, you're going to do the same thing because you don't know what's going on. And now you have to spend 5 minutes asking questions to your game master so that he can get you caught up enough that you can make a decision on what you want to do because you are off somewhere else. You were on your phone or you were chatting with someone on the side. You weren't paying attention during combat, so you know what you're going to do when it comes to you. Decide what you're going to do ahead of time. For game masters, if your players aren't paying attention during combat, stop the combat, remind them that you need them to pay attention, or use some of these other strategies I'm going to mention before. But players, pay attention during combat. If it's a slow combat, your combat will just naturally speed up if you know what you want to do because you've been paying attention. Decide what you want to do ahead of time. When it comes to you, let your game master know and just go right through with it. Next, battles can slow down, especially large ones, if because it can get disorganized. There's a lot more strategy required and a lot more consideration because there's a lot more figures on the field, or just a lot more enemies to picture and figure out what they're doing. And there are tools out there to help you manage that. One great thing I like to call are like battle mats, and a perfect one is the Pathfinder Combat Pad. For your game masters out there, like this will work for any system really, but it's awesome because what it is you have this dry erase board, the magnetic dry erase board, with these little magnetic tabs, which you can see they have an arrow on one side and a place for you to write the name of the character, or whatever monster or enemy that they're fighting, and then you can actually place them on the board, in the order of their initiative. It's real easy for you to move them around as their initiative changes. I mean, there's other things on here like that'll help you manage it, such as there's a delay line, a ready line, and an action line that you can slide them between to help you remember who's doing what. But ultimately, this just helps you get organized. And when you get this thing, you get like two of these full of tabs that you can use, including little things like such as turn and next round, so you can manage things such as like multi-round spells. And it's also double-sided, so in case like it gets really big, like you have a lot of things on there, you can go from one side right onto the other side and clarify rounds and whatnot. It can just help you get organized, and it's very handy. Another thing that you can do is, especially if you're running your initiative, turn for turn, is when you're getting a character's action, kind of keeping to the whole theme that combat is supposed to be fast and you don't necessarily have time to think about what you're doing. Something that you can try is you can, you know, limit how long that your players have to decide what they want to do, especially if you have the folks that don't necessarily pay attention all the time and they don't know. They might not, the people who just need to stop and think and strategize, you don't really want to let them do that because their character's not going to get to do that. Well, something that you can do is pick up one of these. This is a simple little hourglass timer. It's just a 30-second timer. You can get this at a craft store, a hobby shop, or even, if you just have some older board games such as Trivial Pursuit and stuff. A lot these are typically in them, and you can always borrow it from one of those to use in there. It's really handy. You just use this whenever it gets their turn. They have until the sand runs out to decide what they're going to do. And if they can't figure it out, they're delayed, and you just move on to the next person. Alternatively, you don't necessarily even have to go to this. You can just use that delay tactic where, you come to them, okay, what do you want to do? It's like, delay, move on to the next person. That way, they have time to think about it. And when they say, okay, I'm ready to take my action, I know what I want to do now. That's another great way to do it. And as we can see, my timer has run out and I have to move on. Point being, you can use a timer, or ultimately a much easier way to do it is just to, use your delays. If a character in combat, stops to think about something, he's stopping to think. He's delaying his combat. If he's in the midst of like fighting and stuff, and he's stopping and thinking, yeah, that's a problem. But he's still stopping and thinking. So use your delays or use a timer to get them on the roll. Now, what I really recommend though, something that I do in my games that really helps me keep my combats quick, is get everyone's action at the beginning of the round. Like figure out what your enemies are going to do as a game master, but go around the table and ask, okay, what are you going to do for the round? All right, what are you doing for the round? Okay, what are you doing for the round? What are you doing for the round? And what? Oh, you don't know yet? Okay, what are you doing for the round? All right, figure that out. What are you doing? If you get all their actions at the beginning of the round, that has them all decided what they're doing for that round ahead of time. There's no real time to stop and think about it. Or if they didn't decide, you delay them, go on to the next person. And if they haven't decided by the time you come back to them, then they are delayed for the round. But getting their actions at the beginning kind of has them locked in. They have time to think about it because you're going around the table and you are giving them the chance to to come back to them. So they get a little bit of time to think, but they don't get an excessive amount of time to think about it. They can't take their time and think about it. They have to think about it on the fly, like their character is. In fact, they're getting. I think that way kind of works out in a equivalent period of time. I mean, granted, players should get more time to think about what they want to do, just because it's a game and you want to succeed and you don't want to make stupid decisions. That being said, you are in combat, so you don't get time to like really just stop and strategize. No, it shouldn't work that way. You get a little bit of time to think. You make a decision. You go with that decision, and whether it works out or not is irrelevant. You made your decision. Now that being said, um, doing it that way can really help go through the combat real quick because now all you're doing is, all right, we come to your turn, you do your thing, make your roll, okay. Um, Describe what happens. Next person, okay. You do this, make your roll, okay. This happens. They go. He moves, roll. This happens. He moves, roll. This happens. It moves, roll. This happens. Okay, you move. All right, roll. Okay, that happens. You move. You're delayed. Okay, you run and hide. All right, that's fine. You move. You make your attack. Roll. Okay, this happens. Okay, new round. So what are you doing for the round? Okay, what are you doing for the round? Okay, just like that. Um, you can also, in accordance with that, in some ways of doing initiative, I know some game masters will have you roll initiative every round, kind of to simulate the flow of combat. That works great. But if you are running in a system that is notoriously slow, or if let's say um, you just have players that just won't pay attention, having them roll for initiative every time is just adding an additional step you have to go with. Have them roll for initiative either for that combat and run with that same initiative through it, or something that I used to do in Dark Heresy because it was so slow. I would have them roll for like if there was multiple combats in a session, I would have them roll for initiative, and that was their initiative for the session. Granted, that kind of breaks the whole simulating that flow of combat thing. You know, now all of a sudden, not every character like now not every character is reacting to each individual combat. Now it's that character's reacting for that day or set of days, which admittedly that kind of breaks the simulation a little bit. But if you have slow combats, it can help out a little. It can give you an edge to keep it moving along. Now the last thing I can suggest is a different way of describing the round of combat. For most GMs, they'll go around the table and they'll describe each turn. They'll go to each player. You make a roll, as stuff happens. Next person, make your roll, and stuff happens. Next person. They go turn for turn until the round is done. Well, there's an alternative way of doing that. Keeping in mind that that these are story games. This is something that involves you describing things as a game master. Um, you can describe an entire round rather than just a turn. That can be difficult when you get into larger combats because there's just more things to consider, but it can really speed up your combat. Um, there are certain things that will come into consideration when you do it, though, such as you will definitely want to get everyone's action at the beginning of the round. There's just no way to do it where you let people think about it and you come to them and let them make their decision. You need to get everyone's action at the beginning of the round so you can describe the entire round. Also, another thing to keep in mind is you're going to be keeping in mind that a round of combat happens in a matter of seconds, not in minutes. Everything that happens in that round of combat is happening at near simultaneous speed. A round of combat may not necessarily be like 3 seconds per action, but rather 6 seconds per round. So things are happening, and people might not have an opportunity to react to them happening right away. Their actions might become interrupted. As an example, and we'll do a real simple example here. Let's say we're playing Dungeons and Dragons, and we enter into a combat, and our party consists of 2 fighters, and they come across an orc. And well, we enter into combat. We get initiative, and it works out that fighter number 1 goes, then the orc goes, then fighter number 2 goes. So, all right, so we go ahead and we go between the 2 players and figure out what they want to do. Player number 1, fighter number 1, is going to run up and attack the orc. Naturally, them both being fighters, player number 2 and fighter number 2 is going to run up to the orc and attack him. And then you know that the orc is planning on attacking fighter number 1. All right, so we got all the decisions, and now it's just time to describe the combat. It's real simple. You describe it as, all right, you two run up. You were moving a little bit faster, so you swing first. Go ahead and roll for damage, or well, roll to hit. Okay, you hit. Go ahead and roll for damage. Well, as you were coming up to swing at him with your sword, you saw that the orc was pulling back on its axe, and when you cut into his chest, he kind of stumbles backwards, creating an opening for you, the second fighter. Go ahead and roll to hit. Oh, you miss. Okay, no damage. So the orc kind of stumbled back out of your range as you swung. Okay, new round. What are you doing for the round? Okay, you're going to attack again. You're going to attack again, and all right, good. All right, so you go to swing again, and the orc this time uh, actually backs off, so you actually swing and miss. But you see that he backs off, and you manage to run up and swing. Go ahead and roll to hit. Okay, great. You hit. Roll your damage. All right, great. You guys killed the orc. Congratulations. Done. 2 rounds of combat. That took what? 3 minutes? Point being, you can describe an entire round of combat, keeping in mind that there will be interruptions to actions because things are happening quick. Things are happening fast, so characters might not get. For example, if let's say how in that second round that first fighter swung and he just automatically missed because the orc backed off at that same moment. The orc was planning on backing up. That fighter, even though he was swinging, um, he did not get a chance to hit because he was backing up almost at the same moment. Sure, it might have been close, but that orc still backed up in that same moment. That's what he decided to do. Granted, that was his action, but point being, you'll get interruptions because things are happening really fast. Characters might get interrupted, or two characters might attack the same person. Like let's say that second player was a wizard and never ran up. That second player was throwing a fireball at the orc, and the fighter decided to charge straight up. Well, all right, they're aiming for the same target, and that fighter goes first. Fighter runs up, kills the orc, but guess what? That wizard had planned on throwing that fireball at that moment, and the fighter ran right in front of him. Boom! Happens. Things will happen and interruptions will happen. You have to keep in mind that things are happening on the fly. So they might not get the chance to think of what to do. You can always give them a chance, like for example with the fireball, give them a chance to will the fireball towards a second target at the last second, or maybe make, let's say that the first fighter, if you really want to, that he's going to back up and he's going to automatically miss. Maybe the first fighter can get a perception roll real quick to notice that he's backing up and compensate so that he can get his attack. You still gave him the ability. You didn't just nix their ability to attack that orc at that moment, but they had to notice something that was happening in combat. They had to act on the fly. So there are lots of different ways that you can use to speed up your combat, or at least make it not quite as slow as you're used to it running. Though, I don't necessarily recommend all of them, as some may work in contrary to others. The definitely two that if you leave with nothing else that I recommend for every game master or every gaming group, one, players, pay attention. When it comes to combat, I know it can be slow at times, but if it is slow, it's all the more important that you pay attention and know what you're doing. It will make the combat go faster. Two, get everyone, for game masters, get everyone's action at the beginning of the round. It just, it simulates your combat a little bit better because now they have to think a little bit on the fly, but you're still giving them time to think. And, on top of that, it gives you some stuff to play with because you know what they're doing ahead of time, so you can think ahead on how you're going to describe things. But maybe there's something else that you could think of that, would help speed up combat. Just something I didn't mention. By all means, if you had a suggestion or if you disagreed with something I had to say, please feel free to leave a comment below. Please like, share, and subscribe so we can keep the conversation going. And as always, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.